Good evening, one and all. We welcome you all. Good evening, one and all. We welcome you all to the International Symposium on Research and Publications of Environment, Health, Well-being and Sustainable Development 2023, commemorating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, nation celebrating 75 years of independence, United Nations Sustainable Development Goals 2015-2030, as part of awareness and campaigns. Also, India's G20 presidency and World Health Month 2023 in collaboration with Sri Holistic Health Foundation India and Sri Research Institute Center for Art Sciences and Wellbeing. Before we start our sessions, let's take the blessings of Almighty.
कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शत्रुबुद्धिविनाशाय दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः.
With the blessings of Almighty, we shall continue with today's sessions. So, we were looking at various aspects of research. Introduction to research and what is research, how to go about the research, and various aspects, elements of research, beginning a research, and doing a review of literature, planning review of literature, selecting literature, various sources of literature, and summarizing literature, evaluating literature, and various ethical aspects in research, and how to link the theory with the practice or the theory with the methods, and what are the various research designs and causality, and also refining and reframing, formulating a research question or a research problem, and defining and measuring concepts through which the research can be conducted by selecting variables, different types of variables, and their measurements, and various sampling techniques and methods which can be used. And we have also seen the reliability, validity aspects. And we have seen the nature, characteristics of sample as well as population. Now, we will move on to further aspects of research. With respect to social sciences, when we are planning a design, we have two types of broad classification of research or research designs or categories: quantitative designs and qualitative designs or research, qualitative research or qualitative research. So what is quantitative research has been already discussed. So we'll not get into that again. So let's focus on various designs as part of quantitative designs. These can be experimental design, survey, program evaluation, secondary data. In qualitative research or designs, we can have interviews or focus group discussion. So when we are talking about research design, what does it mean? What you are actually going to do in the design? You are going to read the literature, that is, you are going to review the literature, and then, as we discussed earlier, we are formulating a research problem or a research question. Then you are defining target population and also selecting the sample through using any one of the sampling methods or a combination of sampling techniques. And you also define how to measure your variables and also what are the variables that needs to be measured. And you also figure out what you will do with your participants when they come into your study. Participants or responders or the sample. So finally, this is called design. So as mentioned in quantitative design, we have experiment, survey, secondary data analysis. Even in qualitative, we have interview, focus, even secondary data analysis can also be taken up in qualitative design or research. Now, let's review the design. So as we have mentioned, there are a few ways where few designs where we can conduct quantitative or qualitative research. So let's review survey design. What are the benefits or limitations of survey design? Basically, what is a survey? When do we use survey? So a survey design, a survey is when a large population has to be surveyed, a data has to be collected from a large population. Like we do census, right? Census of almost the 130, 140 crore population. Enumerators go home to home, collect the data from each house and also mark each house with a label or a sticker or a number so that it can be identified as survey and also can identify with survey data. So similarly, when a large population has to be taken into the consideration of research, then survey design is the most appropriate design. It is cost effective and we can generalize because we have a huge sample, or at times the entire population is surveyed, and it is quite reliable also because we have data from all strata of the population. At times, the entire population as well. So the results are also quite reliable. and we have versatility. We have the flexibility and adaptability, and especially for longitudinal studies over a period of time when we are studying. So these surveys are great designs, and longitudinal designs are great, especially when surveys are used. So both the ways. But there are also certain limitations. Though there is a great flexibility, but it is also rigid in certain characteristics. And it also lacks in-depth gathering of information, because it's a huge, generally survey questionnaires or survey data consist of basic socio-demographic variables. So it doesn't have much deeper data that can be collected, though we have certain research designs or surveys where we can also collect in depth, but again, it takes a lot of time, and even the computation of the results or the data also is a huge time-consuming process. And for cross-sectional designs, we have difficulty with the time order. So when we are conducting a survey over different sections of the population or society or the nation, again, there is a difficulty with the time order. And it is best when done in person to person. But when we do it through phone or through email or through internet, we have certain challenges. Because when we do in person, we also observe other verbal and non-verbal communications and responses. But when we are doing it over email or phone or through internet, we do not know how the person is responding. So there are certain limitations. Of course, every design has its own benefits and disadvantages. And how do we write or prepare quantitative survey questionnaire or questions? Questions are based on operational definitions. As we already discussed, we need to define conceptually and also operational definitions of each variables. We can also include other variables and also characteristics, which are concise and easy to understand and address the most knowledgeable people about a topic. And we should frame and use such words that are clear and concise. We should avoid jargon, and we should avoid words such as having double negatives or double meaning, which can be easily confused with other meaning, which can convey, easily convey different meanings so that it can be misunderstood. And double-barreled questions and answers, jargon, slang, all these has to be avoided when preparing survey questionnaire. It should be clear words, simple words, easy words has to be used, and the wording has to be done in a neutral way. So there shouldn't be no leading questions or leading language or social desirability. We have to be very careful when we are framing the questionnaire, survey questionnaire. And once the questionnaire is ready, it's always good to conduct a pilot study or a pre-testing, which is a key to determine how effective the questionnaire is and whether it conveys what it has to convey. The reliability and validity also can be assessed before actually using it in the research. So we can conduct a pilot study. And as we know, we have open-ended questions as well as closed-ended questions. And we have structured and also semi-structured and different kinds of techniques we can use while preparing a questionnaire or an inventory. So closed-ended questions, which are mutually exhaustive, exclusive, response options, and fence sitters and floaters, filter questions, matrix questions, and group your questions by theme. You can sort it out, the questions, and group them based on the themes like social variables, demographic variables, and other economic. Like that, you can put your questions in theme so that it is easy to organize and also ask. The coherence is there and the continuity is there. And ordering is very important, though it might be a little bit tricky, but it helps a lot. And think about the time required to complete the questionnaire. Always, people may not be willing to spend too much time on filling up the questionnaire. So we also need to look at the time required to complete the questionnaire. Unless and until it is required, do not try to include that question, unnecessarily making it a bulky, huge number of items or questions in the questionnaire. That will not only trouble the responders, but also lot of unnecessary data is also collected, which also which also is not only wastage for the responder, but also for the researcher also. Because there is no point in collecting such data which is not required. Like generally, we can easily avoid certain questions to be asked, unnecessarily including them. It is also, again, the length of the questionnaire will increase. The memory, or if you are printing, it occupies more pages. And if you are also storing it, requires more storage. And again, when you need to compute data, so again, it will take a lot of process. So you have to be very careful which data needs to be collected and which can be avoided. Many times we see students and researchers, they start and after some time they realize that this data is missing and this data we need to collect. And again, it is again, the entire process has to be repeated. Otherwise, again, a new questionnaire or an additional questionnaire has to be prepared and collected. Again, this is a tedious process. The responder may be available, may not be available. And again, the entire process is being repeated and we don't know the same mood or the same context, the responder. And again, the response might change when you go back. Again, repeat the questionnaire. So all these challenges are there. So we have to carefully plan and filter questions accordingly. And always try to make it professional. Avoid mistakes, and let's make it, professional, so that whoever sees or reads finds them easy. Unless and until, you have designed in such a way to automatically process the data, even that also has certain professional look. It can be very simple, elegant, and look professional. And also create a 5 to 10 question survey which addresses the topic of study through specific research question. A very simple, as required, or if you require more questions, you can also include based on your research variables and also your research question. It is up to you. There is no hard and fast rule. You can have some questionnaires have 200, 300 questions also. That are entirely different. Some have just fewer, 10 or 15 also. Even there are certain questionnaires which is a one question survey questionnaire. Like we have World Health Organization quality of life or well-being, where you just need to rate on the rating of 1 to 5, and that's all it takes. So a single question and a single response. So similarly, it depends entirely on what kind of research you are conducting and what kind of tool you are using, whether you are designing yourself or you are using some other tool which has been validated. And make sure you are collecting data and noting down correctly to avoid unnecessary efforts later on. And we have other designs like experimental designs, in which we have classical experimental design, where we have experimental and control groups, and we have random assessment, assignment, and we have pre-test and post-test experimental designs. Hope we all have read about this in our UG/PG. So I'm not getting much into that. There are also variations like only pre-test experimental designs or only post-test experimental designs to study testing effects. And we have also Solomon 4-group design. And we can also have this comparison group, control group. And we have also quasi-experimental designs, that we have non-equivalent comparison group design. So true experiments with random assignment. We have natural experiments. We have ex post facto control groups and time series and matching experiments, individual or aggregate. So there are different designs. And we, in a pre-experimental design, we have static group comparison or one-shot case study or one group or pre-test or post-test or both. But in this, there are severe limitations. We are not getting into that because it takes a lot of time. This, what I'm, taking up is just an introduction, basically to cover all the aspects in a very simple way. So you may understand, may not understand. Those who are familiar, they will be easily understanding. Those who are not familiar, they might have difficulty in understanding, because we cannot explain each and everything due to time constraints. It takes a lot of time, And we also need to prepare. So as this is being orally told to you, so you may also face certain difficulty. So I'm just explaining. You can always, we will have in future one exclusive research methodology workshop on where we'll come up with some visual content as well. So no need to worry if you are not able to follow it. You can just listen to it so that you will have an idea. So we have experimental designs where we need to look at internal and external validity and whether we can replicate the experiment. And there are also various threats to validity, like non-comparable groups, selection bias, placebo effect, and researcher effects, as we have already discussed. No, certain experiments, basically the scientific experiments can be replicated. That is how the reliability and validity of an experiment is. But, there might be certain challenges, like if we conduct on different groups, or there might be selection bias, like sampling, and also selecting sample or population. So there are various aspects that might affect. So we'll also discuss it whenever the time permits. And also analyzing quantitative data, response rates, and non-responsive bias can also be challenged. And also importance of creating a code book. And to analyze the data, we need to prepare a code book that is also useful for transferring the data to SPSS and do further analysis or any other statistical package. And under qualitative data analysis, we have univariate analysis, where we can do measures of central tendencies and frequencies. And we have bivariate analysis, where we can perform chi-square, t-test, ANOVA, and correlation. And we have multivariate analysis, where we can perform regression and multiple ANOVA. And we have other designs like interviews and focus group discussions. And we know interviews are widely used, interview questionnaires, and quite popular also. And there are also various benefits. It can be used for simple as well as complex information exchange. And you can ask follow-up questions also. And through this, we can have a lot of information. And we can also use closed-ended questions or open-ended questions. And you can elicit more responses. And we also get the opportunity to hear to people's stories or versions, perspectives. So, and it can also have lengthy explanations where you can collect a lot of information and participants can reflect out loud about their responses. It can be oral as well as written. And we can also study the process. And there are various interview techniques and considerations. In-depth interviews, which can be both structured, semi-structured, or unstructured, even flexible. And we have interview guide and open-ended, closed-ended questions based on the kind of response. If we want to elicit more response, then we can use open-ended questions. if you want to restrict the responses to fewer choices, then we can use closed-ended questions. Closed-ended questions like, do you have this? Maybe yes or no. We can also keep it open-ended question, which will also elicit further response. Even with a closed-ended question also, you can further expand if based on the response. If he says yes, or if he or she says no, then you can ask. If yes, you can expand, or if no, then you can also put an open-ended question. So in this way, we can use both open-ended questions and closed-ended questions. Here we can have both structure interview, where the structure of the questions, the order of the questions are already decided, and we ask one by one. Where we have unstructured interview questionnaire, where the questions can be asked in a random order. So we have the liberty, we have the choice, freedom to ask any question at any time. And we have semi-structured questionnaires where we adopt both the techniques. Most of the questionnaire is either structured or unstructured, or a combination of both, half of maybe structured. And wherever there is, based on the choices or responses, we can also have the flexibility to add or skip certain questionnaires, or randomly based on the responses, we can also shoot other questions from other sections. So there is a greater flexibility. But again, we have to be very careful when using them. We might get lost, or we might, end up collecting certain data. So all these have to be well practiced before conducting an interview. And also, in the pre-interview, you'll also provided with certain self-directed supports. Maybe you can ask, like, what outcomes are important for you in assessing the effectiveness of self-directed support, or what strengths in your organization or in your institution have been helpful in implementing self-direction, or what internal and external resources were helpful in implementing self-direction, or how has your organization overcome these challenges, and what internal and external resources were helpful in overcoming these challenges. Are there any social, economic, or political trends unique to your state that have affected implementation? So these are types of questions we can ask on self-direction or any other topic selected. Now, creating an interview guide is very important and a very crucial task. We need to have the brainstorming on whether to include a particular question or not, and how that question should be asked, and where it has to be placed, position, and grouping similar questions together so that there is a continuity, similarity, and it's easy to organize data, and working up to sensitive questions. Wherever there is certain sensitive questions, we need to be aware of those things. And also seeking feedback from other researchers. Once the questionnaire is prepared, we can ask our fellow researchers, our supervisors, guides, or experts, or peer reviewers, or auditors to have a look and share their observations. And basically, unless and until your research is very specific or very confined, always avoid yes or no questions. Because sometimes there is an in-between also. We cannot decide. So in that case, we'll be missing out crucial information. And also have probes. Like, as I mentioned, if we are using closed questions, like especially when we are asking yes or no, then you can tell me, you can use probes like, can you tell me a little more about that? Why it was yes, or how it could be yes? And always avoid leading questions and remain objective. When you are using leading questions, you are directing the respondent to give the answers you are expecting. So these questions often lead the research in a predefined, expected way. So always avoid leading questions. And try to use open-ended questions that will elicit more responses. And there are various techniques for interview. It should be natural settings, in neutral settings. And we can also do record of the entire interview if permitted. It's always better you ask prior to them so that you can also note down important points and responses. So there are, of course, audio recording has also its own challenges, as I have mentioned. If someone else is conducting, you may miss the visual cues of the respondent. And we have field notes also where the observer collects from the field. And we also transcribe or transcript the interview through transcription also. And it is also important to note non-verbals. And when analyzing interview data, we have shorthand for a complex data, which can be termed into meaningful units as codes, and identifying ideas in the text, where we can use open coding or focus coding or coding matrix, or whichever might be more appropriate. And categories or themes with an open mind is used in open coding, and focus coding, collapsing themes, building connections and setting descriptions. And while asking of what topic, unit or aspect is this an instance, or what question about a topic does this item of a data suggest, or what sort of answer to a question about a topic does this item of data suggest, and what proposition is suggested, need to be looked out. And especially with qualitative methods, it is time consuming and it relies on self-report and emotionally draining also based on the topic. Certain topics, can have an impact on your emotional status and well-being as well, especially certain sensitive topics which are related to abuse, trauma, or grief or loss. There are certain issues as well, challenges in interviewing, especially, power. When power is involved, researcher edits the truth when telling the public. Now, when you are under pressure, so you don't want yourself to put into trouble, then you hide and edit the truth when telling the public, and you manipulate the research, and use of self-disclosure and clear intent. And finding a location is also a challenging task, though both convenient and comfortable for participants may also evoke sensitivity. So we have to be very careful wherever we are conducting these interviews that is convenient and comfortable for the participant or the respondent. Otherwise, it may evoke certain sensitivity or challenges. And we need to develop relationships with the respondent or the participant or the interview. Like respect, we need to deal with the responder with utmost respect, and we need to build a rapport so that the responder feels comfortable and also trust you. And we need to express our gratitude always, and we have to be an active listener. We cannot ask, can you repeat it? Again, it may sound that we are not interested or we are not eager to learn, and it can convey a lot of meaning. So the responder might lose interest also, may withdraw also at times. So that's why we have to be a very active listener, not only to verbal cues, but also to the non-verbal cues. And when it comes to focus groups or focus group discussions, we'll be having multiple participants. And there we have to focus on group interactions, both non-verbal and also verbal interactions. And we need to be, or we have to be, a facilitator and moderator for the interactions. And here confidentiality concerns are there. When a group of people, group of participants are interacting, there might come up certain confidentiality challenges or concerns. And the group size is also very important. The group should not be too big as well as too small. It should be adequately formed so that it can easily initiate conversations, dialogues between the members. And the group members also needs to be selected carefully to include diversity that contributes to the research. And there might be familiar and unfamiliar participants. We also need to balance. Otherwise, within the group, there might be a subgroups form in the discussion that may also impact the overall group interactions. So we need to look at familiar as well as unfamiliar participants, not only within the group members, but also participants who are familiar to the researchers also. And we can have multiple viewpoints. Always remember, we need to be open to multiple perspectives and viewpoints. So as we've seen, let's look at the strengths and weakness of focus groups. As we already mentioned, the strengths are it's detailed and in-depth data can be collected, and with less time consuming than one-on-one interviews, because we have group of members where we can collect data simultaneously. And it is useful for studying the social process and allows to researchers to observe body language in addition to the self. And it also allows researchers to observe interaction between multiple participants. But it also has certain weakness because it's expensive because we need to call or we need to organize a convenient place where a group of people can come together and sit. So it can at times need more space. So it can be expensive and maybe more time consuming than survey research, because we need to observe to many people at the same time. And also we have, as we have already mentioned, discussed, there can be certain challenges of forming subgroups like minority or majority group. Group participants or members might dominate entire group. So we may have skewed expressions or experiences or discussions. So we need to be careful. And there is a lot to discuss that we will take up some other time. Because these are topics, each topic can be discussed for hours together in detail. So we'll just have an overview, then if time permits, we'll take them. And we have unobstructive research also. So how do we conduct unobtrusive research or measures? We can do research from through historical analysis, content analysis, and secondary data. So generally, qualitative methods are used to examine past developments with the goal of informing the present. Also used to inform cross-cultural comparisons, especially in policy research. Consider primary versus secondary sources and hermeneutics, arts of interpretation. And also, if we are to design a historical study in your topic area, where might you go to find historical data? What archives must you need access to? And what questions you want to ask? All these has to be looked upon. And we also have various strengths and limitations as for each and other designs as well. So no Hawthorne effect. And though these are cost effective usually, and is a possibility where we can correct mistakes, and it is a good way to study historical or perform or conduct historical analysis. But here there might be the issues in validation. So validity problems generally arise, and data may not exist. There might be huge gaps. So we may find or we may not find certain data. And at times data may not exist at all. So limited availability to understand the context, because we are not part of the context and we don't have much information about the context. So we'll have limited ability to understand the contextual cues and the context of the history. And we have content analysis. Who says what, to whom, why, how, and with what effect. So the content, when we are doing content analysis, it is very much important to study who is saying what and to whom, and why he is saying, and how he is saying, and with what effect he or she is saying. So this way we do content analysis. And of course, there are other ways as well. And studying texts and their meaning. These texts also include printed materials, visual media, performances, arts, etc. And as usual, we have in these also primary sources and secondary sources where we can go directly collect the data, or we can look for the secondary sources where the already published data is available. And it's not a review of literature. We should always keep in mind, content analysis is not a review of literature. And we need a coding sheet to code. And it is very essential and useful, in fact required. And we have various choices in content analysis: qualitative, identifying themes, identifying meaning of themes. We have quantitative, like assigning raw values to the data for statistical analysis. We have physical traces. We need to understand the context in which it was created. The deeper you go into each text, the less you can cover. So, and also we need to have the choice of inductive or deductive analysis. So qualitative content analysis. What text could we analyze that might address the migration or displacement problems or immigration possibilities? How could we analyze current text using content analysis? Or how could we analyze historical text using historical analysis? Let's ponder upon. And there are secondary data sources. Basically, what is secondary data? It is a data collected by another researcher for his research or for any other purpose. And purpose may include, it is cost effective and less time because already data is readily available. And it includes, we can use this data in answering a new research question, in replicating results using different statistical methods, and also analyze data. So usually uses large data sets from surveys and other large studies. We have certain disadvantages with secondary data. Data may be out of date. It might be collected long back. Our study may have used outdated definitions, diagnosis, and vocabulary. So it may not be relevant to the modern context, present context. No control over the type of data collected because it was already collected data on which we are working on. So there is no control of the type of data we can collect as it was already collected. And there might be missing data which we might require. Again, we need to conduct, we need to look out for other sources. And there might be missing data, complicated coding and weighting, and lack of documentation from original study also at certain times poses difficulty or challenges in understanding and using them. And when it comes to reliability in obtrusive measures, stability, do you code the same thing the same way each time? There are methodological notes, coding rules, auditing, peer review, and intercoder reliability. Do all researchers on your project code the same data in the same way? So do peer review, conference, methodological notes, coding rules, statistical analysis. And when we are looking at accuracy, does your coding meet an objective standard? Example, clear, accessible language, clear communication index. and whether we are conducting research in a controlled environment or a natural environment. Especially, it is more important in a real world research. Here we have evaluation research, how effective our programs, policies are from various inputs like clients, customers, people, etc. The process involves activities that constitute the program or intervention. Its direct outputs or products like clients served, staff trained, reports, etc. And outcomes, impact of the program success. So inputs, program success, outputs, outcomes. Stakeholders, individuals, and groups with interest in program. There are logical models, social problem, target population, assumptions, the cause of the social problem, and appropriate intervention to address social problem. We need to provide inputs and various activities and outputs with intermediate and final. And finally, the outcomes should be relatable to the assumptions. So we have single subject designs, repeated measure of a dependent variable over time, and we have baseline period before the intervention during which a pattern emerges, like stable line, trend down of a cycle, and treatment, the intervention done by clinician, and graphing x-axis, that is time, and y-axis, that is dependent variable. And usually these single subject designs usually have a AB design, baseline, treatment, and ABA design. Measurement continues even after treatment. And also we have retrospective baseline. And action research involves stakeholders, empowerment, knowledge, whose knowledge is important, and social justice, and various other aspects. And finally, after completing the research, we need to report the research. And here comes the good, bad, and ugly. All, if you are not able to present it in a very well manner. So why did I conduct the research? So we need to put questions to ourselves. Of course, we also have done it earlier. Because these, again, asking again, exploring them will give you, better understanding. Why did I conduct this research? And how did I conduct this research? For whom did I conduct this research? And what conclusions can I reasonably draw from this research? And knowing what I know now, what would I do different? And how could this research be improved? These are the few research questions to start with. So who is your audience? Where is your audience? And how do you reach your audience? And we need to prepare a professional presentations, a formal talk, about 15 to 20 minutes or as required. It can be as a minimum as 3 minutes or maximum of 30 minutes. Again, it's based on, you cannot just sit or stand there quietly. No? So plan accordingly. Ideal timing is 15 to 20 minutes. If provided adequate time, otherwise based on the time provided. And we can use PowerPoint and other visual aids as expected. And roundtable presentations stimulate conversation and shorter presentation time. And we have poster presentation that tells the story of your project in images. So with this, we shall conclude today. So if you have any queries, you can raise your hand or you can unmute yourself. There are no queries, then request everyone to quickly fill up the feedback form. And registration link has been shared in the chat box. Those who have already registered need not register again. Those who have not registered can register using the link after filling up the feedback. We request everyone to quickly fill up the feedback. We request everyone to quickly fill up the feedback form with valid data. And the conference certificates have been updated for your information. Those who have, filled the feedback forms, we had to do a lot of manual work because most of the forms had a lot of mistakes. We need to literally put on a lot of time and resources in correcting them and generating certificates. So while filling it up, always be careful. You can download all the certificates, presentation, participation of the recent conference from the website. Almost all the 10 days participant certificates also issue. And don't panic or don't get disappointed when you don't find your certificate. That means you still have some work to be done. Or, especially we are observing that people are filling the details in a hurry or, without much care. So they are committing mistakes. They are thinking that whatever we fill will get certificate. No, this is not a platform where, we work in it differently. So don't, assume that it works in the same way as in other platforms. We are very particular about the formalities. So we request everyone to follow the instructions carefully. Don't assume. Most of the issues are because you don't read the instructions. You simply assume that you know it, and you can also easily get away without doing it. That's where, the entire process goes out of control and it creates a lot of inconvenience. As we see, daily we have programs. So every day is a new day for us. Every day we need to plan a speaker and organize, and we need to prepare flyers or these registration links, and we need to circulate, and we need to, inform our friends so that like-minded, those who are interested, they join. And again, that this participation attendance has to be recorded. And again, that needs feedback has to be collected and it has to be processed. So by the end of the day, every day we have a lot of work to do, apart from all the routine work we have. So don't keep pending. So always try to complete on the same day. What happens if you don't do it? You might fill it tomorrow, but tomorrow will not get time, because tomorrow we have to do tomorrow's work. And again, to get back to the same work, it may take a lot of time, because we all have these 24 hours only, and we have so many things to do. Apart from this is an additional task that we are doing. So we have very limited time and resources. So the more you follow the instructions, the more organized you are, because system already is in place. We just need to follow the system so that now we save our time and resources. Otherwise, what happens? If we don't follow the system, again, there will be a lot of rework that has to be done, and that will delay the entire process. First of all, it will consume our valuable time and resources, both for the organizers as well as you also. You also need to repeatedly, follow, and we also need to take out some time, which is not possible most of the time. So you have to keep waiting. That's where most of the people struggle, because they don't complete in time. And that's where, the problem continues. So when you do it in your convenience, it is not possible for us to take time. Always remember that. When it is at your convenience, then you have to wait for our convenience as well. So that's where the entire process gets delayed. So anyway, whatever we can do, we have done it. So whoever certificates are not issued, that means, you have to just assume. We are assuming so many things. So you can also assume that you have done some mistake. And most of the time we have mistake. And if you want to show also, we can show. But once we show, you will not be eligible for the certificate, because already you wasted a lot of time and resources for us. And again, if you ask, we will show where you have done mistake. Again, after that, we are not going to issue you certificate, because already time is lost. So make sure you are doing it properly. That will help you also. And we also to organize more programs. You can also get benefit. Ultimately, you are the one who are going to benefit, because we being organizers, for us, it's okay. Whoever comes also is fine. But when you are utilizing the opportunity through participation, presentation, so you are getting benefit of it. So make best use of resources. Always follow instructions. Don't assume that there we are getting here we are getting, there we are getting. That is not at all a professional way to compare. See, so if someone does, it is not that you should also do that, or you are also doing in the same. So wherever we go, we need to always follow the instructions set by the organization. That will help us only. In fact, our time will be saved. We need not follow up and, lot of trouble daily. You need to remind. And only when we get time, we can only take in, because we cannot stop other things. So unnecessary delay. And you may not get also, because if you don't find time, and again, that cannot be generated. It might take a lot of time. So always follow the instructions, daily fill up the registration form. Before coming, the entire process starts with registration. Without registration, don't take up anything. First, whenever you want to join, first you register, then you participate or present accordingly. If participation doesn't require any additional formalities, you can just, after registration, you can join, or after joining, you can register immediately. Then you can participate and provide feedback on the sessions or the content and whatever it is. And then automatically the system does its process and fill all the details correctly. Even here also we observe they just leave it space, or they just type something and leave it off. How you expect to system to generate certificate? So all these things are there. So thank you everyone for joining us. So tomorrow we will be having one speaker from animal welfare. So we are also looking at One Health aspect. That doesn't mean only related to animals. Like most of the diseases, viruses we are getting from animals only, right? Like even COVID also, there is, widely talked about by consuming bats and wild animals. These have been, and many zoonotic diseases we call. Many of these diseases are coming by consumption of meat, red meat and white meat, all these meat, especially animals. Because of consumption of animals, we are getting new diseases, new disorders, viruses that are being prevalent. So tomorrow we will have entire talk related. Anyway, today's topic is completed. So the topic which we are discussing since last 2 to 3 days has been completed. So tomorrow we'll discuss on One Health. We have invited speaker, and he and myself, we both will discuss. So see you all tomorrow. Take care. Good night.